It happened 2 years ago on Halloween night, in a small town in Ohio where my friends and I grew up. We were all in our mid-20s, too old for trick-or-treating, but we loved the nostalgia. The chill in the air, the smell of burning leaves, and that faint sense of mystery that came with every Halloween night. That year, my friend group decided to do something different. Instead of just hitting parties, we wanted to explore what people around town called the Holloway House. It was a huge Victorian house at the end of a dead-end road, long abandoned. Every kid in town had some story about it. Lights turning on inside when no one lived there, figures seen at the windows, strange whispers when you got close. But the creepiest part? It supposedly only opened on Halloween night. There were 4 of us that night. Me, Evan, my girlfriend Chloe, and our friends Jason and Amber. We'd had a few drinks, nothing crazy, just enough to make us bold. Jason said, "Let's go see if the Holloway House is actually open this year." Amber rolled her eyes, but she was intrigued. "You mean the murder house?" That was another rumor. Supposedly, back in the 70s, the Holloway family vanished on Halloween night. No bodies ever found. The only clue was a set of bloody handprints on the inside of the front door. We piled into Jason's SUV and drove down Holloway Road. The street was unusually quiet. No trick-or-treaters, no music, no laughter. Just the rustle of leaves. When we reached the end of the road, the Holloway house stood there, half hidden behind trees, windows black as eyes. And sure enough, the front door was slightly open. We all froze. None of us expected it to actually be open. Chloe whispered, "Someone's inside." Jason smirked. "Then let's say hi." He pushed the door open. It let out the loudest, longest creak I've ever heard, echoing through the empty house like a groan. Inside, the air was ice cold. It smelled like dust and iron. The living room was surprisingly clean, like someone had been keeping it that way. There were old decorations still hanging, faded streamers, a broken pumpkin on the mantel, and a black and white family photo of the Holloways smiling stiffly at the camera. Amber whispered, "It's like they were about to throw a party and just left." As we moved deeper in, the air felt heavier. There was a faint sound upstairs, like slow, dragging footsteps. Chloe grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" Jason laughed nervously. "Probably a raccoon." But we all heard it again, footsteps, then a soft thud, like something heavy falling. We climbed the stairs. The steps groaned under our weight. At the top was a long hallway lined with doors. One door, halfway down, was open just a crack, and faint yellow light leaked through. Jason whispered, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. He pushed the door open, and we all froze. Inside the room, there was a table set for 5 people. Each plate had a name card written in old cursive handwriting. Henry, Margaret, Lily, Thomas, Evan. My name. I stepped back. "What the hell?" Chloe gasped. "How would they know your name?" Amber shook her head. "Let's get out of here. Now." But before we could move, the door slammed shut behind us. We tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. Then came the sound of whispering. Faint, low, overlapping voices. It was coming from all around us, from the walls, the ceiling, under the floorboards. Jason started banging on the door. "Let us out." No response, just the whispers getting louder. And then, out of the darkness, the old radio in the corner clicked on. A voice crackled through, gentle, cheerful. "Welcome home, Evan. Dinner's getting cold." I felt my entire body go cold. The flashlight flickered back on, and standing behind the table were 4 pale, motionless figures. They were the Holloways, eyes hollow, faces twisted into smiles that didn't move. Each one was wearing the same outfit from the family photo downstairs. The father's voice was the one from the radio. "We've been waiting for you to come back, son." I screamed for Jason to break the window. He swung a chair. Shattered glass exploded outward. We climbed out, cutting ourselves on the way down, hitting the ground hard. When we looked back, the house was dark again. The door, wide open just moments ago, was now boarded shut. We called the police. They searched the place. The windows were sealed, The doors locked from the inside. No sign anyone had been there for years. But the detective found something odd. In the dining room, under a thick layer of dust, there was a fifth plate on the table. The name card read Evan Holloway. I've moved to another town since then. Every Halloween night, I avoid going out. But last night, I found something in my mailbox. A small envelope, no return address. Inside was an old family photo. The Holloways. And standing with them, smiling, was me. This happened on Halloween night back in 2019. I was 19 years old, home from college for the weekend, and my parents were throwing their usual Halloween get-together. They lived in one of those neighborhoods where Halloween still felt like the real thing. Fake spiderwebs on fences, carved pumpkins glowing on every porch, and groups of kids running from door to door laughing. That night started off completely normal, but it ended as the most terrifying experience of my life. Around 9 p.m., most of the younger kids had stopped coming. It was mostly teens and adults left walking around. I was standing by the front door handing out candy when I noticed someone standing at the edge of the driveway. He wasn't with anyone. He wasn't talking. He just stood there, perfectly still, watching the house. He was wearing a cheap plastic clown mask, one of those ones you could buy at a gas station. He had on a dirty hoodie and jeans, his hands stuffed in the pockets. I remember calling out, "Hey, you good, man?" Thinking maybe it was someone from the neighborhood trying to mess around. But he didn't respond. He just tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. After about 20 seconds, he turned around and walked off down the street. I laughed it off, told myself it was just some weird teenager trying to be creepy. But deep down, something about the way he moved, slow, deliberate, made my skin crawl. Later that night, after everyone had left, I was cleaning up with my dad. It was close to midnight. The house was quiet except for the occasional sound of wind pushing against the windows. I went outside to put away the decorations. Fake tombstones, cobwebs, all that. Our backyard connected to a small patch of woods that led to the next street over. As I was wrapping up the extension cords, I heard something, the sound of footsteps in the leaves. They were slow, cautious, coming from the woods. I froze. Then I saw a shape between the trees, tall, still, watching. The flashlight caught the faint glint of a white mask. My heart stopped. It was the same clown mask from earlier. I yelled, "Who's there?" No response. I ran inside, slammed the door, and told my dad. He went outside with the bat and looked around for 10 minutes. Nothing. Whoever it was, they were gone. We called a night and locked up every door. But that wasn't the end. Around 2:15 a.m., I woke up to use the bathroom. As I passed by my window, I caught something in the corner of my eye. There was a shadow standing at the edge of the yard. It was him. Same mask, same stance. He was facing the house, completely motionless. I whispered, "Dad," but by the time my dad got to my room, the figure was gone again. We stayed up for the rest of the night, lights on, TV playing quietly in the background. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, my dad checked our security cameras. We had one pointed toward the driveway and another near the backyard. Around 9:02 p.m., we saw him. The clown masked man walked up to our driveway, the exact moment I first saw him. He didn't ring the doorbell, didn't knock. He just stood there for 3 minutes, staring straight at the door. Then he walked to the side of the house, out of frame. At 11:48 p.m., the backyard camera picked him up. He stood at the tree line for nearly 30 minutes, barely moving. Then, and this part still makes me sick, he walked up to the back door, pressed his hand against the glass, and leaned his head close to the camera. You could see his chest rising and falling, slow and steady. He just stood there breathing. At 12:23 a.m., he disappeared into the woods again. We sent the footage to the police. They said they'd seen similar reports from nearby neighborhoods. A man in a clown mask watching houses but never breaking in. They never caught him. But 2 days later, when my dad went to get the mail, he found something on the porch. A plastic clown mask. It was cracked down the middle, covered in dirt. And underneath, it was a folded piece of paper. It said, in messy handwriting, "You looked right at me." It's been 6 years since that night. I moved out of that house long ago, but every Halloween, I still get a package. No return address. Inside, there's always a new mask. Different each time, a vampire, a ghost, a pumpkin face. But last year's package was different. Inside wasn't a mask. It was a photo. A picture of me standing in my front door from the night it all started. And in the corner of the frame, hidden in the shadows, was the clown. This happened to me on Halloween night in 2021. I was home alone that year. My husband was out of town, and our neighborhood always got a ton of trick-or-treaters, so I decided to stay in, hand out candy, and watch some horror movies. Everything started out like any other Halloween. Kids in costumes, parents laughing, the sound of leaves crunching under little feet. But something about that night felt off. By 11:30, it was completely dead outside. All the kids had gone home, and most houses were dark. I was about to turn off the lights and head to bed when I heard a knock at the door. Not a playful trick-or-treat knock, a slow, heavy one. I froze. When I opened the door, there was a child standing there. He couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. He wore a homemade costume, a simple black cloak and a white mask with hollow eyes. In his hand was a small plastic pumpkin bucket. He didn't say a word, just stood there, holding out the bucket. I forced a smile. "Hey there, you're out pretty late, huh?" Silence. I dropped a few pieces of candy into his bucket. When I looked up, he was still staring. Then, in a soft, flat voice, he said, "You shouldn't have opened the door." And just like that, he turned around and walked down my driveway. I stood there for a good minute, trying to process what he said. Then I laughed nervously and shut the door. But for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was really wrong. After a few minutes, I went to the front window to see if I could spot the kid, maybe to make sure he got home safely. But the street was empty. No cars, no kids, not even the sound of crickets. Just a faint, cold breeze moving the leaves. I went back to watching TV, trying to calm down. But around midnight, I heard another sound, footsteps on the porch. I muted the TV and listened. There were 2 sets of footsteps now. Slow, deliberate, then a whisper. She opened it. My heart dropped. I stood up, turned off the TV, and reached for my phone. Before I could even dial 911, 3 loud knocks shook the door. I didn't answer. But then a child's voice called out, "Trick or treat." Only this time, it sounded wrong. It was deeper, stretched like someone mimicking a child. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. At first, I didn't see anyone. Then I noticed something at the end of my driveway. 3 figures. Small, still, all wearing the same black cloak and white mask. None of them moved. Then one of them tilted their head back and looked directly at me. I dropped the blinds, grabbed my phone, and ran to the bedroom to call the police. When I told them what was happening, they said they'd send a car right away. But before I could hang up, I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Except this time, it was at the back door. I moved toward the kitchen, every light off except the faint glow of the fridge. The back door had a small glass window, and as I got closer, I saw it. A hand pressed flat against the glass. Small, pale. Then, slowly, a second hand appeared beside it, and a third. It started tapping, soft, steady, in unison. I screamed and ran into the bathroom, locking the door. I could hear them moving around the house now, footsteps circling, knocking on different walls. Then silence. When the police finally arrived, the knocking had stopped. They searched the whole property. Nothing. No footprints in the yard. No fingerprints on the door. No candy buckets. Just one thing, lying on my doormat, a single white mask. The officer told me there had been similar reports across the state that year. Groups of masked children showing up at houses after midnight, saying strange things, then disappearing before police arrived. No one was ever identified. Last Halloween, I didn't hand out candy. I kept every light off, locked every door. But around 11:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my front door camera. Motion detected. I opened the app. The camera showed my porch. And standing there, perfectly still, was a small figure in a black cloak and white mask. It tilted its head toward the camera, and in that same flat voice said, "You opened it once." The feed cut out. When I checked the porch minutes later, nothing was there. But in the middle of the welcome mat was a small pumpkin bucket filled with candy. Each piece was wrapped neatly, and on top was a folded note that read, "See you next year. If you made it this far, you're braver than most." But tell me, which story chilled you the most tonight? Drop your answer in the comments if you're still awake. And remember, Halloween night isn't over yet. Lock your doors and hit that subscribe button before something else does.